Okay, welcome, bienvenue everyone to the special council meeting. We will call this meeting open. Has everybody had the chance to, we need a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda. Councillor Randy, seconded by Dave. All in favor? Okay, good. Does anybody have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will continue. Zoning bylaw amendment application. So this evening, there is a public hearing scheduled for two zoning bylaw amendments. One, application number ZBA 21-10FR, Julie Bowman and Wesley Rubsatai. Two, application number ZBA 21-11FR, Joanne Beno. The Planning Act requires that a public hearing be held before councillor decides whether or not to pass a zoning bylaw amendment. The public hearing serves two purposes. First, to present to council and the public the details and background to a proposed rezoning. And second, to receive comments from the public and agencies before a council decision is made. Monsieur Dumont will provide a summary of the applications. From there, the applicant will be requested to make a presentation via live webcast, followed by questions from the public via live webcast, either in favor or against the proposal. Council will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, the director of planning, or anyone giving presentations. The zoning bylaw amendment will then be considered by council later this evening. Monsieur Dumont, would you please advise how public notice was provided?
Notice of public hearing was posted at the municipal office and was sent by mail to the assessed owners within 120 meters of the property subject to the proposed zoning bylaw application. To those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the application this evening, the notices were sent on June 16th, 2021, being over 20 days prior to this evening's meeting. Included with the notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the application, and a key map showing the location of the property.
I now declare this portion of the hearing to be a public hearing to deal with application number ZBA 21-10FR, Julie Bowman and Wesley Bowman. Monsieur Dumont, will you please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application?
So how this application all started was back on February 19th, our office received a compliance letter. So what a compliance letter is, a lawyer extends out to myself and says, hey, Matt, can you do due diligence on this property? Kind of like a quick scan. You see any issues, constraints, building permits, land use permission. So I addressed the request. I sent it back to the lawyer. And as part of that process, I noticed that there was some issues or some concerns. So I addressed that, and then subsequently, the lawyer contacted my office. We had a discussion because the lawyer was representing buyers of this property, and so prior to buying the property, the lawyers wanted to ensure if their client went through with the deal that there wouldn't be any serious constraints or surprises. So that was the whole intent of the dialogue back and forth between my office and their office. And so fast forward. Their client ends up buying the property knowing the process that they will have to proceed with once they acquire it legally. So that then basically happened on March 12th, and then led to about April 5th, where I was finally in touch with the new owners of the property and had a teleconference with them to basically kind of explain to them how to go again about this process in terms of a zoning bylaw application. And what the purpose and intent was, which was basically when they were going to buy the property, there was a building permit that was issued for a different structure. And as part of my due diligence, that was not intended for a sleep cabin. So we wanted to basically, what we wanted to do here through the zoning bylaw amendment was to recognize an existing sleep cabin that's on the subject property, but more importantly, make it legalize that use because it's there today. So that was the intent of what we are proceeding with tonight, is to maintain the current rural zone, recognize an existing sleep cabin and legalize it. And so they can continue the use of the property. So this all came to be when we were due diligence with the law firm at the time. And then I did bring this attention and this information to the building department. And the building department did address this matter in their comments. And their comments basically stated that, or the municipality of French River, between the two of them, saying that there was a building permit back in 2017 that was issued, 17-057. And the intent of that building permit was a 12 by 21 shed, which was issued at the time with the previous owner. So that was no longer the intent, because it is based on the zoning bylaw. It is a sleep cabin. So the owners not only have to go through this process, but have to go back to the building department to, just amend their building application so that it means it meets the intent of that use, which is a sleep cabin. I did conduct a site visit, so everything kind of falls in place in terms of the criteria for designating a sleep cabin in the zoning bylaw. I conducted my site visit back in June, and I have no further issues in terms of the application. So the purpose tonight is just to legalize that structure and to move forward with it, so they continue to use the property with no further issues in the future. And with that said, I have no issues with the application and can be supported from a planning perspective.
Okay. I don't believe we have the application online, Mel. There is nobody, no public either. Okay, seeing none. Are there any questions or comments from council to the planning director of planning? Okay, Dave?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Matt, do we send out the building inspector to when the application gets reviewed for when the actual building application? Does the building inspector inspect it, make sure it's up to code as for a sleep camp versus a shed?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's a very good question. I think what we should do tonight is maybe have Melanie write down that question, or somebody from staff from that perspective, or myself, and to reach out to Andrea. I think that question should be addressed by Andrea herself. I don't want to speak out. I don't know actually in terms of how that's conducted, but it's a very good question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I have just a quick question. So the previous owner had applied for the building permit, Matt?
That is correct.
And then the new owner is allowed to build with that same permit, or did they have to issue a new permit? Or
so
built the existing cabin?
Yeah, so to give you a little bit of context, how this all came to be is, for assessment purposes, when I conduct my due diligence, I automatically go right to MPAC. I look at the assessed structures. So when I'm doing my due diligence on this letter, I'm saying to myself, I'm looking at the structure, and the structure is assessed as a different type of structure. So it triggers a point in my thing saying, hey, something's a bit funny here. They're getting assessed as a shed, or as a sleep cabin, but a building permit says it was a shed. So that's where I automatically reach out to the municipality and the building department, get the information that I need before I issue this letter to the lawyer. So to your point, Madam Chair, the building permit was issued 2017 for a shed. They purchased the property. They are aware that the property is not in compliance with the zoning, but yet they're still willing to proceed with the purchase of the property, knowing that they're going to be in contact with myself as well as Andrea going forward to just fix this little minor issue. And that's what they've done. They've actually been in contact with Andrea, and they're going to have this application hopefully approved this evening, and then everything's good.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more questions from anybody? Okay, seeing none. I guess we have a resolution. And I will need a mover and a seconder. Counselor Bob and Counselor Dave.
Duly moved and seconded, be resolved that bylaw 2021-41, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2014-23 as amended, Wesley Rabitaille and Julie Bowman, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
All in favor? Okay. So please be advised that there is a 20-day appeal period during which time any person or public body may, no later than 20 days after the date that the given or written notice as required by section 34-18 of the Planning Act is completed, appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal by filling with the clerk of the municipality a notice of appeal, setting out the objection to the bylaw and the reasons in support of the objection, accompanied by the fee prescribed under the local planning act appeal tribunal. During this appeal period, no building permit will be issued and no work commence. Okay, we will continue on to the second zoning application. I now declare this portion of the hearing to be a public hearing to deal with application number ZBA 21-11FR. Joanne Bano. Monsieur Dumont, will you please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application?
So this application all started again with communication with the building department, specifically Andrea. So the individuals, Joe, I've met with Joe on a few occasions in person, as well as teleconference. So how this all started was that Joe had reached out to Andrea Torini, that being the chief building official. And the reason he reached out to her was to construct a detached garage on his waterfront property. So from those discussions, it led to a further discussion with myself at the planning board. And the reason for that was where he was locating his detached garage, which was in the rear yard of his waterfront property, because he's got his camp close to the water as well as his sauna. So in the back, that's where he's proposing his detached garage. So through this process, for whatever reason, his property was zoned rural. So when you're looking at a rural, even though it's waterfront, it's zoned rural, obviously with rural requirements, the setbacks are significantly greater from your neighbors. So to give you an idea, when you have two waterfront lots and you have your lot line that's abutting two properties, you always have to have 3 meters. So if you're going to build a garage, you got to be 3 meters or 10 feet away from your neighbor's lot line on waterfront properties. Whereas if you have a rural zone, obviously you're going to have a larger significant setback. So the easy way this is more of a housekeeping thing. We said, hey, Joe, you can maintain where you want to build your garage, which is approximately, he was looking at 3 meters, but it's a housekeeping item because we have to change the zone from rural to waterfront residential because that's the intent of the use of your property, and always has been. And so that way we can recognize his 28 by 28 detached garage that he wants to build. And his neighboring property where it's backing onto just happens to be his brother. I just learned that as I was conducting my site visit there that day. So we had a good discussion on site, and I had no issues in terms of the close proximity of that setback where he was proposing his detached garage in relation to, not just because it's his brother, but in relation to his property itself. So for that reason, we're basically just recognizing the intended use of the property, which is waterfront residential. And therefore, as a result of that, he can build where he would like to build, which is approximately 3 meters, which does at the end of the day meet the intent of the waterfront residential zone. And basically and just to give you a little bit more context of what's going on behind the scenes in terms of communication. So as soon as Joe, we started this process on May 5th. So on May 5th, we started the process with the communication with the CBO and Joe. May 17th, I send that application out to Joe. And on 10 days later, I have a teleconference with him to finalize this whole process. So within a month, we already have a decision already made from my end going forward. So based on Joe's actions, I felt, and based on my site visit, I felt comfortable in saying, as you read on the previous decision, that you always have to wait 20 days for an appeal to go through before something can be done. So I communicate with Andrea saying, hey, Andrea, like I'm okay from my end based on everything that I've taken in, and that you can issue a conditional permit. So that way Joe isn't waiting, at the end of tonight, he has to wait another 20 days before he can actually get off the ground and get his construction or his footings and foundation ready to go. So I communicated that by email to Andrea. I had no issues if you want to issue a conditional permit. And so that way it streamlines the development and that he can continue to work on what he needs to work on. In the meantime, we're addressing this matter this evening, and really there's no hindrance in timelines for construction. So that's the intent of the application tonight. And sorry, with respect to agency comments, the municipality of French River didn't have any objections or concerns. And in terms of other comments, I didn't receive any other comments from the public or other agencies that I did circulate out for this application.
So the applicant is not here to make a presentation.
That's correct.
And I don't think we have any members of the public. So we will continue on to, are there any counselors that have any questions for Matt? Okay, seeing none, I believe we have a resolution prepared, so I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Dave, seconded by Dean.
It's duly moved and seconded, be it resolved that bylaw 2021-40, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2014-23 as amended, Joanne Baino, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
All in favor? If there's no further questions, then I declare this public hearing to be concluded. The zoning bylaw amendment will be considered by council later this evening. Please be advised that there is a 20-day appeal period during which time any person or public body may no later than 20 days after the date that the given or written notice as required by section 3418 of the Planning Act is completed. Appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal by filling with the clerk of the municipality a notice of appeal, setting out the objection of the bylaw and the reasons in support of this objection, accompanied by the fee prescribed under the local planning appeal tribunal. During this appeal period, no building permit may be issued or other work commenced. So I believe we need a mover and a seconder to close this meeting. So Councillor Randy, as seconded by Dean, all in favor? And now we'll see you back on for our regular meeting in about 30 seconds.